My name is Christine Atwood. I have been raised in church my whole life. I have loved being in any kind of ministry I can throughout the church. Awanas, singing in the choir. I was our puppet leader at our church. I love being at church. I love being around the people of God. But there become a point in my Christian walk where anytime I was struggling or having a hard time with anything and I wanted to go to somebody and talk to them about it, Satan just put in my head, you can't do that. They'll think you're a bad Christian. And so I would keep it to myself. And I'm not really sure why I ever felt that way, because nowhere in the Bible does God ever tell us that he expects us to be perfect or anything that we're going through just to keep it to ourselves. If anything, God tells us the complete opposite. But that's exactly what Satan wanted me to believe. And after so long, I just started getting so worn down. And I never realized how worn down I was and how broken I was until the day I went home. I remember taking a shower, sitting on the edge of my bed, and then I just reached for a bottle of pills. And I remember pouring them in my hand and just started swallowing them, handful after handful. And I just thought to myself, what is the point? I am failing at everything. I remember waking up in the hospital with a tube down my throat and IVs coming out of every part of my body. And I just remember I was so heartbroken. Why? Why did God not take me home? Why? I remember within the length of time I was in the hospital, I flatlined twice. My lungs collapsed 50%. My vocal cords were damaged from having so many tubes bit down my throat, but I was okay with not talking. I had nothing to say. I remember having so many visitors and cards that were sent to me and gifts that I received, but I would just sit there and think, they just don't know. The second time I flatlined, they had to cut me open from my chest past my belly button. And they had to leave me open for 3 days because my body just becomes so toxic. And after just so much time going by of being in the hospital and going through so many tests and just everything that I had to go through within that length of time, they finally allowed me to go home. And I remember going home with a feeding tube. I was still recovering from being cut open. I was so weak, I had a hard time walking. But slowly, I started to build my strength back. I started to be able to talk little by little. And I remember Tony calling me, and I remember him saying that he had a youth rally coming up, and he would love for me to come and give my testimony. Well, I thought he was crazy. So I told him, well, I'll pray about it because that's a nice Christian way of saying no. And then I remember calling my pastor just to vent to him about how crazy Tony was, that he would want me to come and give my testimony at church. And then he continued to talk and ask me if I would do the same thing at our church. And I just remember thinking, all of these people that gave up their time and traveled to the hospital to see me, all of these cards and gifts, how do you want me to get in front of them and tell them that all of it was my fault? So I remember going to church, and I remember giving my testimony. And as soon as I was done, I went to the first seat I could get to, and I sat down. I just put my head down. And I remember feeling a tap on my shoulder. And when I looked up, there was a line of people, not to shame me, but to love me. They hugged me and told me that they loved me. And they told me that they are here for me and they are going to help me to get through this. I remember it was like God himself come down and hugged me. There was a time after that, a little time went by, and I ended up coming and staying with Tony and Jen for a little while, and I met my husband, Danny, and it's the best thing I've ever done, because God blessed me. And I remember within our first year of marriage, we were so excited because we were going to have a baby. And I remember we had a miscarriage. But this time, with this struggle, I gave it to God. And with my church family, God's people, we got through that. And I'm telling you, the power of God's people is strong. And when Satan would tear me down and tell me my life was nothing, God blessed us with 3 beautiful little girls. They're 8, 9, and 10. And just to be their mom and to pour God into them is the most humbling thing God could ever allow me to do. And then God also has allowed me and my husband to work in the college and career ministry at our church. And just to be able to tell them, God doesn't expect us to be perfect. God gave us a family for a reason, for us to get through this life together. And Satan had me so fooled and thinking that my life would not impact anybody, whether I was here or not. And when Satan was trying to tear me down and tell me that I was worthless and broken, God picked me up and brushed me off and reminded me that I am his child and he will never leave me nor forsake me. And he is not done with me yet.